Hello and welcome to Adventures in Venueland, an EVMC podcast. Join us for this all-access pass backstage and behind the scenes with some of the brightest minds that cross the scope of the live event industry. I'm Dave Rettelberger.
And I'm Paul Hooper. We'll introduce you to incredible guests who journey with us as we dive deep into the world of venues, tours, festivals, and everything in between. Grab your laminate and meet us in Venueland.
Today's adventure takes us to Brooklyn. From being an event coordinator in Mobile, Alabama, to running the Barclays Center, our guest today has seen it all in her more than 25 years in the live event industry, from Jacksonville to Atlanta to Boston. And now she's the executive vice president, business operations, and general manager of Barclays Center in Brooklyn, New York, and so much more. We'll get into it all. Please welcome Adina Erwin. Hey, Adina, how you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
Good, thanks. You said when we were setting up, you said you had a sound check happening as we're recording. Who do you have in the building today?
So we have a Liberty game, a New York Liberty game, WNBA game. And so they're sound checking, all of the music that they play, during the game. So you might hear some of that in the background.
Oh yeah, Liberty are hot stuff right now. One of the top teams, and with obviously so many players that were on the national team.
Right. No, it's been an exciting season, and we're looking forward to definitely heading back to the finals this year.
Well, I know it feels like everybody in the world knows what Barclays Center is, right? But there are some folks listening who may be newer to the industry. And tell us what's going on there, and tell us a little bit about the venue and where you guys are at in 2024.
Yeah, the venue. So Barclays Center is the arena that's plopped right in downtown Brooklyn, New York. And it is one of probably 4 arenas in what they consider the New York market. Of course, Madison Square Garden, everybody knows about Madison Square Garden, which is located in Manhattan, and then UBS Arena, which opened maybe about 2 years ago now, which is out on Long Island, and then the Prudential Center, which is in New Jersey. So Barclays Center is in Brooklyn. And if you're from this area, all of those other arenas, with the exception of Manhattan's MSG, are not really New York. Okay. So if someone mentions these others, that's the way people in Brooklyn are in and of themselves, arguably maybe not even a part of New York City. It's Brooklyn. Okay. So there's that. But so it's the venue, it's the arena in Brooklyn that hosts the Brooklyn Nets and the WNBA New York Liberty, and then many concerts throughout the year, and family shows, and many of the events that I know you all have in your venues around the country. Very, very busy venue here. We just did PBR for the first time, which I would love to hear from other people who do dirt quite often. But this was the first time dirt was actually put in this building since it opened in 2012.
The ops guys love it, don't they?
Yeah, with bulls and all, right? So that was interesting, but it was great, and it's going to come back every year now. So that's been an adventure. So it's always fun, I think, to in any venue, but especially here in Brooklyn. This venue is only 12 years old, which is young, as in venue lifespans.
Yeah.
So in many cases, there's things that come through here that's like it's the first. So let's see how this building behaves. Let's see how it handles this new thing. And so PBR was the latest and greatest in that iteration, as well as I think last year we did Monster Truck, which that hadn't happened here before. So that's always exciting. But yeah, it's a neighborhood venue, believe it or not. You'll hear people in Brooklyn talk about the fact that it is a very accessible venue, especially during 2020 with all the protests. It became kind of the town center for people's voices to be heard, and people came and protested out on the plaza in front of Barclays Center, and it continues to be kind of that town center for Brooklyn to this day. We talk about weather and some of the other forecasts. We have like a protest forecast that we talk about for every event because, people are out there protesting.
Yeah, sure.
And it's not about, it's not always about something controversial. It could be, about, the teachers and postal workers, want to have their voices heard. Various entities that just they're protesting. And so we accommodate that to some degree on the plaza. So we are always prepared for protest activity. So it's really become, in the 12 years it's been here, kind of a convening space, both outside and inside. So it's a real special place to work and manage every day.
That's really cool to be sort of this front porch to the community, where people can gather, let their voice be heard, meet other people, challenge their own opinions, but also, feel like they're making a difference in their community. And what a front porch too. Like, I think those of us that know the venue know it because it is, there's no other arena like it as far as that plaza with that, I don't even know. I'm sure there's a term for it, but like the oval,
Oculus.
the Oculus. Of course, it's got some cool term like that.
Oculus.
The Oculus.
Yeah.
It's just very, I'm sure everyone knows about it, but if you don't, you should Google it and check it out. It's very, it's a looped LED screen, right? But it's not your typical, almost like ribbon. It's, changes in height depending on where it is, which makes it such a unique, part of the venue, but also such a cool thing that you all celebrate. I know, like on your social and other things where you really lean into it as being something unique to that space.
Yeah, we do. We definitely lean into it. And again, I think we sit atop of a major transportation hub, one of the larger ones in the New York City market. And so a lot of people not coming to the venue necessarily, but just moving and transitioning, in and around Brooklyn and into Manhattan, et cetera, come through that particular station and walk up under that Oculus. And so again, like I said, the venue, this is probably the first venue that I've worked in where it is the connections and touch points of the venue are far, well, I don't know, even maybe a little bit more people who don't even come into the venue, but there's a touch point with the venue, right? It's not just about the events and things that we do inside, but it's definitely about interacting with the venue in some shape, form, or fashion, just moving around the plaza, coming in and out of that station, all of that.
It's hard to believe when you said it's been 12 years. I had to take a step back because
I know it seems like
it
was
still
not
feels
that
like
long
I
ago.
remember when you guys opened, like it was yesterday, and you've been there for what, almost 4 years now.
Mm-hmm.
So tell me about where the building is at now, and kind of what it's like being in a market where you're competing with those other arenas. What's the challenges and some of the great things there?
Yeah, the industry, especially as it relates to arena renovation and new arena builds, has really, I think, pushed the timetable as it relates to renovation for a venue that is only 12 years old, right? So when you ask me like what has changed or what's happening in this particular venue right now, like we're talking about major renovation to a 12-year-old venue in ways that you normally wouldn't be talking about it. But it has a lot to do with what's happening in the industry right now, and what people expect from an experience, especially coming out of the pandemic, et cetera. So, prime example of that is like how people or guests interact with, suite products, right? The days of having an arena that has like 80, 100 suites is kind of moving in a different direction. There's only probably a few, arenas out there right now that have that many suites that can, that has a good engagement percentage around that particular product. Most arenas are having additional types of ways for, guests to interact with the space, where it's more of a collaborative kind of experience, or smaller types of interaction type spaces. And so, we found that we had 2 levels of suites in this venue, had about 86 suites. And we decided that we were going to reduce the number of suites that we have to one level. And then the second level, where we had a number of suites, about 20 suites, we are taking that and using those two areas as two different clubs. So we're creating two clubs that have seats, of course, but have a club that's associated with it, attached to it. You've seen that product quite a bit in a lot of the new arena builds and some of the renovations. So we're in the process of renovating and doing that now, as well as just looking at different tiers of interaction with guests in different ways. So, what can we do with the people that are sitting in the upper concourse? I think you've seen in some arenas around the country where they have like these fan decks or fan zones in the upper
Right.
parts of the arena. So we're looking at, and exploring options in that area as well. And then we have, an ultra experience type of product in our Crown Club, which is on the event level, which is for those folks who, for basketball games, are seated courtside. So just looking at different ways to engage with our guests, but looking at it in a way where you normally wouldn't be having this conversation in a 12-year-old venue, right?
Right.
You
Yeah.
wouldn't be doing these types of major renovations or master planning around like a new center hung, right?
Right.
At 12 years old,
So
right?
true.
So, but because of where, the industry is moving and technology is moving, and I think some of this was either accelerated or was a catalyst of the pandemic, we find ourselves in a situation where we're having to have conversations, planning, funding resources, all of those types of things around some significant renovations in a 12-year-old venue. But I think the good thing, that we have going here is that we've got a really progressive ownership group, very supportive ownership group. They see the trends, they understand the trends. They're out to try to make sure we are offering the best experience possible for people coming to Barclays Center. And so we have that support as we continue to grow and make sure that that Barclays Center remains relevant and doesn't become complacent.
It does feel like since the beginning, Barclays Center has really embraced. I mean, I think every venue does this to some degree. Is, of course, you're trying to capture like what makes you, how do you, become a part of the community. But it feels like from the court designs to the colors of the venue to the outside to even with the team's jerseys, like it has such a unique feel that feels so Brooklyn. But even like some of those really cool alternate kits where they'll have, or kits, but alternate jerseys where it'll like maybe embrace some lyrics of some artist that's been there. I mean, it's so cool that, I'm sure that makes things fun when you are doing kind of these reinvented spaces, as you have this history of, the area that you can really tap into and try to like pull in things that really, pluck those strings of what makes Brooklyn, Brooklyn.
Yeah, absolutely. And our marketing team does a phenomenal job at all of those things you just mentioned, very much leaning into what Brooklyn is now, what Brooklyn has been historically, the hip hop, history that exists in Brooklyn, all of those different things that make Brooklyn unique. And this venue is very iconic and unique in how it shows up just in general. Like you talked about, if you're just driving down the street, it just kind of pops out at you, and it's different than anything else that's around it. But then to how that's manifested inside the venue, even down to the fact that, we don't have in our food and beverage portfolio, we don't generally have national brands in the concession stands as far as front-facing concession belly ups. We use all either created in-house kind of integrations, food integrations in our concessions locations, or it's a Brooklyn-based business, and we actually incubate some of these, food organizations in our Brooklyn market and grow them to a point where they can actually have a stand that is front-facing around the venue. So it's really about, you're right, it's really about Brooklyn. It's the Brooklyn way. I mean, I have a pen on right now. That's what we do. We walk around, we talk about it's the Brooklyn way. So very, very proud, proud to be a part of that type of a culture.
It's so neat to hear what you're doing there, but I want to get into what you're doing because when I look at your bio, I see that obviously you've got a lot on the table. But what break this down for me? What does this mean? Obviously, Vice President, Business Operations, General Manager at Barclays Center. You also oversee facility operations for HSS Training Center, BSC Global Headquarters, and Industry City. All kinds of stuff going on. So sounds like you're a busy woman, but what is it you actually do?
Yeah, so I work for BSC Global, which is Brooklyn Sports and Entertainment. And Brooklyn Sports and Entertainment has a lot of different businesses that sit under that umbrella. Barclays Center is one of them. Brooklyn Nets is another. New York Liberty is another. And so we have a headquarters location that is also in the same building, if you will, as the practice facility for the Brooklyn Nets. So that facility and the people that manage that space, I work with very closely. And then, of course, Barclays Center. But we're looking at other opportunities to expand, when I say we, BSE, around hospitality assets that are inside Barclays Center, but then also outside Barclays Center. And so looking around, again, how Brooklyn Sports and Entertainment can continue to be ingrained, I think, in the fabric of what is Brooklyn, but showing up in different ways over and above just the entertainment and the properties that you know so well of the Brooklyn Nets and the WNBA, and then of course all of the different concerts that we do in Barclay. So it's a really interesting time to be, I think, a part of this organization and be in a place where, when we're talking about potentially expanding into additional brick and mortar types of properties, that I sit at the table, to be able to potentially influence and manage some of those types of operations. So when you ask me, like, what do I do? It's really about making sure that, if our current properties being at, Barclays Center and our practice facilities are operating, in an optimal fashion, the services that we offer both to our internal stakeholders and, of course, all of the guests that come through the front doors of Barclays Center, that we are, providing, that experience and all that means, from technology to food to, ticketing to like all the things, capital improvements, that we're at the front of the line on those things and working and managing and developing the teams that do that. So that's what I do.
No easy task. It sounds like fun though.
It is a lot of fun here for sure.
Yeah.
And I'm sure it's a lot of work and a lot of things going on. But I want to know where did your love for the live event industry come from? At what point? Because you started off obviously in event coordinator, event service manager role. So what kind of got you into it to start?
So when I graduated from the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill, I got a part-time job. I moved back home to Charlotte, and I got a part-time job as an event receptionist at the Charlotte Coliseum. And this is when the Charlotte Hornets played there the first time before they moved to New Orleans, and then they moved back. So this was when the Hornets played. They were an expansion team, and they played at the arena there. I had no idea about this business. Like, I had no idea about, I thought people that came to the arena, I mean, you come to the arena, people that worked at the arena, they were there for the events and then they would go home. Why else would you be there, right? Like,
Right,
what else are you doing? I had no idea that, like, this is a thing. This is a career that you can, excel in. And so when I became the event receptionist, that's when my eyes were open to like a whole new world, right? And as a receptionist, you're back then, especially because people, that was your primary mode of getting information about the show and what time and all that was to pick up the phone and call. There was no like, let me look at the website or social, none of that. So you were getting lots of calls coming and you had to know a little bit about everything, right? Because that's how people communicated. And so I learned a lot, I think, about an arena and operating in events and things, because I had to know, a lot about how to answer those questions or direct people to the right place. So that was my intro into the business. And luckily, I ended up having two gentlemen who serve as kind of mentors to me to this day. And that's Sporty Geralds, who was the general manager of the Coliseum at that point in time. and Steve Camp, who was, I don't know what his title was then, but it was like the CEO of the authority that was over all the venues in Charlotte, North Carolina. So, and they, took me under their wing and allowed me to kind of even explore beyond like, the receptionist desk. I got to the point where I was, there for like when I didn't even have to work because I just wanted to learn. Like I remember specific events like when the circus came and I got to walk through like the area where they kept all the animals and I'm seeing like the tigers and back then it was the Gunther Gable, you probably remember him, right?
Yeah,
And he
for
was
sure.
back,
Yeah.
right? And he was back in the back taking care of the elephants and doing weird things with elephants, like he was giving one an enema. It was very interesting. And so that happened. And then after that, there was like the Grateful Dead concert, and then all the Deadheads ascended on the venue and camped out in the parking lots. And I remember walking through the parking lot. It was almost like walking through like the animal containment for the circus. It was just a different situation, right?
Yeah.
I'm walking through there and looking at all the people who came converged, and even before the event happened, and there was this guy that had a Pinto, and he had like a big ball in the back of the Pinto that had like was almost as large as the back seat, but it was like yeast. He had grown like a dough or something with the yeast. He just let it like just grow. Just, so I say all that to say, like, I was like, this is it. Like, this is what I'm doing. Like, I'm not doing anything else. I want to learn all I can learn. I want to, do whatever is necessary. So I just started working and, I was, even just there, I would do a little bit in the ticket office. I would help out different departments. I just wanted to learn. And so that's really, how I got introduced to the business.
One of the things, in your career is, you do network on, like you said, event services and, guest services, and you moved a lot every couple of years. You were in the early parts again from Alabama to Florida to Reunion Arena in Texas. So do you think that was important for you to kind of be able to grow your career, was to find those new spots?
Yeah, I absolutely do. I think I was kind of told early on by someone or people that, in order for you to kind of move up in this business, you probably need to be open to moving, right? Because, a lot of times, and people get in certain positions, it's a good environment. It's a good industry to be in. And so, sometimes people tend to not leave those positions. So you have to be willing to move. That's one reason. The other reason is, if you want to get varied experiences in different types of businesses or even different types of venues, you probably are going to have to leave one venue to go to another, right? You're going to have to potentially be open to moving. And so I think what was driving me is the climb up, right? But then also what was driving me was that I knew that there were other types of venues. I knew that, learned a lot, about convention centers and stadiums and theaters, et cetera. And I, set out early on and said that I wanted to be able to say that I'd worked in all of them. I wanted to, be able to say I, had that experience. And so that also is what drove me. And so, yeah, I was trying to move up, get experience in different venues and get experience in different types of skills. So, I was also one of those people who said, I want to get a little bit of marketing. I want to get a little bit of ticketing. I want to learn how to book a building. And so I had to be open to what types of venues were going to give me that experience. It wasn't just going to be an arena. So I think that was really those are the three things I think that were driving my moves, as you saw in the early part of my career.
What was it about you that you think got you to that first, from that event services manager role to that, director of guest services at American Airlines Center, right? So, obviously people see something in you, you bring something to the table when you get, chosen for that director position. And what do you think that was?
I think it was just the willingness to be open to the opportunities as they presented themselves, no matter like how necessarily they showed up. Like I may have had in my mind at the time that I wanted to move into being, I don't know what I was thinking then, but like a director of operations. But, so it just so happened the organization at that point in time needed someone who was more customer service, guest services driven to fill a void. And so And so that was the opportunity that was presenting itself in front of me. So of course I'm going to walk through that door. And I think that can-do attitude and that openness and that nimbleness is, I think, what was attractive, I think, to the people that worked around me, to look to me as a person that could move into that particular role at that time. But again, I had that mindset that, like, no, I haven't done guest services yet. Okay, let's try that, right?
Yeah,
right. Yeah.
And I'm gonna be creative, and we're gonna figure this out. And that's what happened.
I think it's great having this willingness to jump in the deep end. I think that can be really scary for people, and it seems to maybe even be scarier as time has gone on. I feel like some of the younger generation, some of them are very eager, but other ones are maybe more apprehensive to kind of take that risk. They want something that's a little more guaranteed, and I think there's something admirable about being willing to jump in and just say, we're going to learn how to swim. I probably am not the best at this, but I'm going to learn how to be the best, and then I'm going to find the next challenge, on top of that.
Mm-hmm. And you have to be, I think, in the right environment too. I think you have to feel like you're in an environment that's going to support that, and
True.
support
Yeah.
you, because
that allows you to fail,
and allows you to fail,
and supports
exactly.
you as you grow. Yeah,
exactly. Because they probably see something in you that maybe you don't even see in yourself, so they have. So I think it definitely also takes the right nurturing type of environment to even feel okay with stepping out there and maybe not knowing or having all the answers or the experience that you think you might need to do certain things. But again, I think at that point in time, I would say, going into a director of guest services role from an event services, again, it was something that I hadn't done before. And under that role also was like security. I hadn't done that either, right? And so it was just a way for me to say, okay, this is my next step, my next adventure. I want to get this experience. I'm going to learn and embrace this opportunity.
We talked about how, you moved from job to job to job for a little bit at the beginning, but then you settled in for a nearly 15-year run at the Fox Theater in Atlanta, where you took on some big roles in a kind of different venue. Talk to us about your experience there in Atlanta.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the Fox Theater is a phenomenal organization. That's one. It is a historic theater, but it absolutely does not operate from a place of like, this is how we've always done it. It's not that type of organization. It's very progressive. And hence the reason why I think it can say that it's, stood the test of time since 1929. But even in most recent years, it's been a very, very progressive entrepreneurial type of organization. So in those types of organizations, there's always like newness and new things and new exploration, new perspectives. And so that's what kept, I think, that stint, fresh, because and why I stayed there for 15 years, because it was always something. It was always a new project or some other, I think, iteration that we were exploring or trying to navigate through or what have you. So, and then the people were wonderful and the leadership was wonderful. So it was a great environment to be in. I think layered on top of that was I got married, and I had children. And so when you start to layer in the personal changes that happen in this business, you have other people to consider when you're thinking about moving than just your dog, right?
Right.
So you have to start thinking that. So when you couple like the fact that like there were some personal changes that happened in my life, along with being in a very, dynamic, nurturing, organization, it just felt right to be there for, I didn't plan to be there for 15 years, but that's how it happened. It was good for my family to kind of grow and be nurtured. And the Fox was a great place for me, the type of person who needs to have, new projects, new initiatives, things to sink my teeth into. That organization was not a maintaining organization, is not a maintaining organization. It is definitely a progressive organization. And so it fit my personality and my work style as well.
We have the conference actually going to Atlanta in June. It's the first time it's ever gone there in over 40 years, which is kind of incredible. And I love Atlanta, not being that far away in Kentucky, and I'm so excited. But what are some of your favorite things about Atlanta? I think that's part of it too, is you can find a great spot, but if you don't love the city, you're probably looking for somewhere else. So you must love some stuff about the city too.
Yeah, I mean, I think I do love Atlanta and I miss Atlanta. And, I love the food. I mean, I think I took that for granted. The food scene and just in general, the different types of food, the restaurants, the caliber of restaurants, the culture of the restaurants, the way, like you talk about Brooklyn, well, how, these restaurants pull on the Southern, kind of culture to inform and infuse their menus, et cetera, from the butcher shops, and then all of the unique and neat neighborhoods in and around Atlanta are just it's just amazing. So I think there's always like the landmarks and the touristy places that you would go, like the aquarium and the King Center and all of those. Those are all wonderful, but I think that just understanding kind of the Southern culture, if you will, and how it shows up in different ways, and food and locations and neighborhoods and things like that is what I miss the most about Atlanta.
An opportunity in Boston came your way, and you ended up heading out of the Fox Theater and taking an SVP role with TD Garden that lasted a little less than a year. So walk us through that and kind of how you went from the Fox Theater to TD Garden and then to Barclays Center.
Yeah. So, while I was at the Fox, probably like, a year, I don't know, 14 or 13, I had started thinking, one of my main goals when I got in the business was I wanted to be the GM of an arena that had an NHL or NBA team. And I hadn't done that yet, right? And so I didn't want to get to the end of my career and have any regrets, or like, oh, I wish I had done this, or I wish I had, had that experience. So I just started to be open to, opportunities that, presented themselves to me. And TD Garden was one of those opportunities. It just so happened that I left the Fox in January of 2020, and what happened in March of 2020. So it's
Right.
kind of, who knew that was going to happen? But went to TD Garden, was, definitely excited, of course, because you've got like the historic, storied franchises of, the Boston Celtics and the Boston Bruins, in that venue. And it's an amazing city. So, totally enjoyed the time that I was there. But honestly, it was a tough time, I think, in that year for so many of our venues and businesses. Tough decisions had to be made. And so I was, furloughed, in that particular opportunity. So I would say 2020, we could talk all day about 2020, right? And
Yeah,
all
we
how
we
it
have.
right, and
Yeah.
impacted us individually and our company,
Uh-huh.
et cetera. But it was probably the scariest time from a career perspective for me, because, I'd left a job that was wonderful. I wasn't running from anything. The Fox was great. I took a chance, left a job, and then, took another job, and something, out of this world takes place and changes the trajectory of my career. And so I talk about, and I've talked a lot of, to people about making sure that when you come into this business, that relationships and networking are so key, and maintaining relationships and also maintaining your reputation in the business is so important. And I would say that came full circle for me. My first real job with benefits, if you will, in this business in Mobile, Alabama, was given to me by Bob Newman, who was the CEO of AEG Facilities and then was the CEO of ASM Global right after the merger. He was the GM of the Mobile Convention Center when I joined, right back in the day. And full circle moment, he, was the one that reached out to me during the pandemic and was like, hey, do you want to come work for ASM Global? And so that's how I ended up initially at Barclays Center in November of 2020, came into this venue during that year. That first NBA season that was played with no fans, got the building open and met all of my, colleagues and people that I work with through Zoom.
Right.
Didn't
Yeah.
meet them in person until months later, and many of them until months later. It's just a really, really, weird time, across the board. But I don't have to say that. You all know, you all live through it too. But from a career perspective, it was definitely a scary time and a turning point for me. But again, like I say, I think that, because of relationships and that relationship that I had with Bob Newman is how I ended up landing and moving from a TD Garden to a Barclays Center in New York.
Yeah, it's definitely something that, speaking for myself, someone that maybe likes to feel like they have some control over their trajectory. And then when something is thrown at you that you had no control over, it's really scary because it's kind of like, for me, I'm usually forecasting problems way far down the line. That way I can avoid them completely. So when something pops up and then it changes and you're like, there's no way for me to have even known this was a possibility, it can be really, wild. But I mean, maybe I'm sure you would feel the same way. It probably forces us out of our comfort zone in a healthy way.
Absolutely.
And, despite all the other stuff that happened, it makes you understand, you can go through something that's maybe wild, that's, not something that you would ever see coming, and you can get through it to the other side. And, you wouldn't necessarily ever wish another pandemic. Please goodness, no other pandemics. But, if something were to happen that would, really throw a curveball at your life, you can find a way through it.
No, absolutely. And, and again, lean on your people, your network, your friends, your family, your colleagues in the industry. I mean, I've heard non-pandemic, times and stories in which people who have done that, and it really goes back to, like I said, as it relates to this career, this is a big industry, but it's also very small, right?
Yeah, totally.
And it is really, it is really truly about relationships, and it's important to maintain those relationships throughout, your journey through the career that anyone has in this business, because it definitely shows up. It shows up for you when needed, and it definitely showed up for me.
You have kind of also made it a priority to help out with the next generation of folks. As much as you credit people for helping you, you've committed yourself to that and kind of taken on a teaching role with IAVM and some of the school offerings there. So talk to us a little bit about what you do there.
Yeah, so I started to teach at the Venue Management School back in 2003, which used to be called, people used to know it as Ogilvy, and then it's now since moved. And I taught there probably until 2019, I believe. And so for a number of years, was in a position to kind of really interact with people who were in that kind of middle management, upper management, space in their careers in different types of venues, coming into that school. And I'll tell you, and I think many of the instructors that teach within that school will tell you walk away getting a lot more than you give, right? Because it's not too many opportunities in this industry where you're able to, I think, be in a concentrated kind of situation with over 200 people who are in the industry, coming from different places, and you're able to touch each and every one of them for, if not just a small time, but in a small amount of space, et cetera. It's amazing. And so I think I learned a lot from that experience. So yeah, I would say that I think that, at least for me, like you said, you've heard that I've talked about people who mentored me along the way. I think it's a responsibility, at least I look at it as a responsibility, that once you get to a place in the industry, wherever you are, in the industry, we have a responsibility to impart, share information with other people within the industry that may not be where you are, but maybe wanting to, grow into spaces and places and roles that you may be in or have, influence on. I think it's important that we do that for the survival of the industry, right? And for the sustainability and the health of the industry. Because it's such a wonderful hidden jewel, right? I think it's still hidden, right? I don't think people still know about it necessarily. I know that there's a lot more sport management programs that have cropped up over the years, right? Like, there's a lot of those programs, but a lot of those people in those programs don't necessarily offer venue management as a track, right? They may have a class. And so, students don't really even know a lot about the fact that this is such a fulfilling kind of way to go. So I think it's important that we we are ambassadors. Everybody's an ambassador around sharing information, be it on an individual perspective as mentors or, larger teaching, educating, speaking, at conferences and those types of things, going into colleges, all of those things. I think it's important to do that for the reasons I mentioned earlier. And it's the reason why I've continued to do it and love to do it, because this industry has given so much to me and fulfilled so many things for me. I wouldn't want to work in any other business.
Adina, you mentioned, your family there for a while, especially growing in Atlanta. Tell us about your family today.
Yeah, so I've got two children, a son who just turned 18, and I've got a daughter who is 13, Martha and Michael, and my husband who was also Michael. And my husband and I were high school sweethearts, and we went to the prom and everything. But then we went our separate ways after high school graduation, and then we were put back together, quite honestly, by my mom.
Thank you, Mom.
And we've been together ever since. And so, yeah, we reside in New Jersey, and my kids, I think, have done a really good job of transitioning from Atlanta to the north. It was definitely an awakening and a transition.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Change for sure.
But they've done really, really well, and I'm really proud of everybody.
I know there are people listening today who have just gotten into this business, and they're at that first, maybe they got their entry level job with guest services, or they're a promotions manager, or those things. And listening today, what's your one piece of advice for them, if you to kind of help yourself along that path and make you succeed?
I would say keep an open mind about the journey that's ahead of you, because I think the experiences that might present themselves as next steps may not show up in the clothes and in the way that you thought that they might show up, but they're good experiences, next step opportunities that you want to stay open to, because it's about getting experience and certain levels of experience, and it's about also meeting people and convening with people as you go along this journey. So I would say, stay open-minded as it relates to the opportunities that are presented to you, be it on, it doesn't have to be a job. It could be, to what, we talked about earlier, Paul. It could be, it could just be a project, that someone's coming to you and saying, we want you to, lead this particular initiative or this project. And you may be thinking, oh, I don't know, I can't do that, or that's not what we do, or what have you. Like, don't do that. Take a beat, step back, listen, think about it, and don't tell yourself no, and be open-minded to it. See where it takes you.
Love that. Hey, before we let you go today, I want to hit you with our Fast Five. It's just 5 quick questions, looking for your short, instant response. First up, what was your very first concert?
I think it was an Earth, Wind, and Fire concert when I was like 8, is what I remember. Yeah.
Do you have an all-time favorite concert?
I would say it would be when Prince performed at the Fox Theater, which is one of his last performances. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. I know.
How about your favorite thing to do on a day off?
Take a nap.
Since we're all going to Atlanta with the EVMC conference, as Paul mentioned earlier, give us one place we should go grab a meal.
This is just for Dave, by the way. He actually doesn't care that anyone else knows this.
Well,
we'll remove it from the final edit. It's just going to tell me where to go eat. What can I not miss?
I think, one of the well-known spaces is going to be Mary Mac's, which is actually right down the street from the Fox Theater on Ponce de Leon. So I would say definitely get a meal there, Mary Mac's.
I'll write that down. We're going to check it out.
All right.
Last question. What's your theme song? So there's a TV show where, reality cameras follow you around all the time. What's the song that plays over the opening credits of the Adina show?
I think an Earth, Wind, and Fire song was Shining Star.
Yeah.
Shining Star. Yeah.
Love it.
Love that.
Hey, anything you want to plug? If people want to follow you or reach out to you or your venues, throw out any plugs here that you want to mention.
I don't have any plugs. I'm not prepared for plugs.
People know how to follow you. Look up Barclays.
Yeah,
Look at all the cool stuff.
Me, it's all about the WNBA New York Liberty right now for us.
There you go.
Oh yeah.
Look at the back, my walls are painted like seafoam green. I've got on my jacket today. We got a game tonight, so I'm all
They're
about
fun. They're really fun to watch.
WNBA basketball right now. So that's a big plug for us right now.
I love that. Adina, thank you so much for the time today. I know you're really busy, but thought it was really inspiring to hear your adventures and your journeys. Thanks for sharing it with us.
Thank you. Thank you for the time. Nice to meet both of you.
Yes.
And a big thanks to everybody for listening to this episode of Adventures in Venueland. Remember, you can subscribe and find more episodes wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts. We do love your 5-star reviews. It helps others find us. Until the next adventure, I'm Dave Ruddleberger.
And I'm Paul Hooper. Thanks for listening, everyone. The Brooklyn Way.
Adventures in Venueland is a side project of the Event and Venue Marketing Conference, a marketing conference that brings together diversified event and venue professionals to cultivate education, collaboration, and innovation for the growing sports and live entertainment industry. Find out more at eventvenuemarketing.com.
Audio editing and mixing by Camille Faulkner.
Design and digital advertising by Megan Ebeck.
Copywriting and publicity by Samantha Marker.
Guest booking and brand strategies by Paul Hooper.
Guest research by Dave Ruddleberger.
Marketing strategies by Paul Hooper, Megan Ebeck, and Samantha Marker. Thanks for joining us. Until the next adventure.